Good day, everyone. And today we move to speak about Victorian poetry. Last time we've seen how women played a major role in the literature and criticism of the Victorian age. We said the 19th century witnessed some sort of a huge peak, a huge rise in the production of novels. And we've seen how women were contributing more to English literature and the body of English canon in general. However, it doesn't mean that women were free to do anything, to say anything. It meant that they were more courageous, more independent. Not that they were not brave before, but that the society, in a way or another, improved, developed, progressed a little bit, and women acquired more and more tools of expression. Still, we've seen how women would use sometimes pen names of men in order to be able to publish, to reach out to a wider audience, so to speak. So today we move to speak about the Victorian age. I'm not going to go in a lot of detail here. I'm picking two Victorian poets, male poets, and you can go read more from the book and other resources about other female poets, mainly Elizabeth Browning, for example. She was a famous English Victorian poet of all the time. So the Victorian poetry, in a way or another, also mirrors the age it was written in. We've seen how the novel was a mirror of the social life, of class division, of poverty, of corruption, of all these sort of struggles. We've seen how women novels were also tools of empowerment, to give women voices, to try to show good examples for women, how women can be independent and end achieving their goal, whatever it is. So today we speak about the Victorian poetry. The first major poet is Alfred Tennyson. Okay. Now, Alfred Tennyson, as a Victorian poet, later on became the poet of the nation, like the poet laureate. The Queen loved his poetry. Remember, Queen Victoria became a widow early in her life, and she lost her husband, and she remained unmarried, like for I think 40 years or so, really a long period. And because his poetry is generally a poetry of loss, regret, sadness, or unhappiness, she loved his poetry. She read his poetry, and in a way this made his poetry even more and more famous. When the Queen reads your poetry and likes your poetry, definitely it makes you a famous writer, a famous name in your age. So his poetry is, of course, totally different from the poetry of the Romantics. I say this sometimes. There was an overlap when some Victorian poets were writing poetry, some also Romantic poets were still alive or writing poetry overlap. But the sensibility, the concerns, the interests were more or less different. So, for example, remember what nature meant to the Romantics? Meant beauty, truth, right? Nature was poetry itself. But here he sees something else in nature. It's no longer an object of beauty. It's an object of cruelty, an object of despair. This is a more realistic, for so many people, the Victorian age is more realistic than the poetry of the Romantic age. So nature read in tooth and claw, in a way he is personifying nature in a way or not. But nature here is likened to a monster, to an animal, probably a tiger or a lion, a ferocious, wild animal. Its claws, the claws of the animals, the paws, and the teeth are red because blood, yeah. So in a way, this is nature for him. No longer my heart leaps up when I see a rainbow. No longer I wander lonely as a cloud, and my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. Nature is, so according to critics, this is a more realistic vision of life, of nature. Nature is not all roses and rainbows and flowers and solitary reapers and singers and everything. There is a lot of sadness in life. There is a lot of despair, a lot of pessimism in life. So here in this line, this is a very famous line. Like there's so many interpretations, but we take the fact that he is stressing the cruelty here, rather than how nature is good to our senses, to our memories, and to our experiences. How nature helps us, recall these memories in solitude, and then when in vacant or in pensive mood, we dance with the daffodils, or our hearts dance with the daffodils. So this is one major change, or two actually, the realistic vision of nature, and the fact that he focuses here on the cruelty, the darkness of nature and darkness of life. So one of his most important poems is called In Memoriam A.H.H., which is an elegy to one of his friends. His name, I think, is Arthur something. I don't care. So the poem is about loss, regret, death, and despair and pessimism. It's about how when you are, remember, in the prime of your age, you can simply just like that die. You could hope, remember the positivism of women writers who always believed good things will be coming, the good is yet to come. Men were usually more pessimistic, darker than women. And this is a great difference. And I remember I said about this, I mentioned this last time, how women were, I don't want to say that they were purposefully contradicting men, like men are all like, oh, we are all going to die. And women are like, no, there is still hope for us. It's not because they wanted to contradict, but at least they wanted to give hope for women. Like for women, like with struggle, with more fighting, more raising your voices, you can acquire more freedom and independence. And this is the poem actually that Queen Victoria loved. And she, some people think that she considered her favorite text ever. Because again, she was a widow herself. She had a man dear to her heart, her husband. Not sure if she liked him or not, but at least like she loved the poem here because it reminds her of loss, of sadness, of darkness, of despair. So that's why generally he's considered up. Doesn't mean all his poetry is poetry of loss and despair, but sometimes you become more known for one particular type of writing because of something. So here the fact that the Queen loved this poem about loss, death, and despair made Tennyson more famous for this type of poetry. So he's generally considered to be a poet of sadness. Again, it doesn't mean he was solely, exclusively a poet of loss and sadness. So his poetry shows a wide range of subject matter, and not all his poems have a tone of unhappiness. But he's more famous for the ones about sadness and about loss. One feature in his poetry is the dramatic monologue. And as the name suggests, monologue, some sort of a soliloquy, right? Monologue. What is a monologue? Exactly, like you're talking to yourself. There's one character. It's like more like a one-man show with a dramatized experience. This is not a play, so it's not a soliloquy where you, in a way, you address the audience. This is a speech by one person, one woman's speech, where the thoughts are revealed, where the character is developed through this, dramatic monologue. So this form uses a speaking voice, which shows the poets or the speakers, whether male or female, thoughts, inner thoughts, I would say, like a soliloquy in a way or another. And the character itself comes out and is developed or develops and evolves through the ideas and the words of the monologue. So when you read the text, you feel that there's one speaker, and the speaker is, in a dramatic way, revealing his or her thoughts. And in this monologue itself, the character is developed. The plot, if we have a plot of the poem, is also developed. The characteristic features are revealed through dramatic monologue. He did this in so many of his poems. Dramatic monologue. What is dramatic monologue? We have one voice, the voice of the speaker, whether a man or a woman, that reveals the inner thoughts, probably inner conflicts. Similar to a soliloquy, but a soliloquy is basically in drama, in play. This is in poetry here. So, for example, in one of his poems entitled Ulysses, and Ulysses is taken from Homer's The Odyssey. Do you know Homer? Homer's The Odyssey, very ancient, one of the most ancient epics, 2,000 years ago. The Odyssey, the Iliad. Are you familiar with the Iliad and the Odyssey? You should read more about this. At least read more about Homer's The Odyssey, the Odyssey or Iliad. I'm not sure if you heard about this in Arabic. So, the main character is Ulysses, and Ulysses becomes a main character in many texts. We'll speak about this next class. How, in, for example, James Joyce's novel Ulysses, there is a reference there. So the hero is borrowed in a way or another from the ancient times. So Ulysses speaks in old age about the need to go in and find new worlds, new ambitions, new experiences, new worlds. Remember, I said this somewhere in the novel, and it's clearer in poetry. The critics and the poets and the authors were really obsessed with finding new worlds, finding new experiences. In a way, people were tired, fed up with what was going on. They wanted new things, real new things, like, come on, just... And by the way, we find this everywhere at the end of every age. Like somewhere at the end of remember the Renaissance, like people, come on, we need something new. And then a new era begins, a new king, a new queen, a new movement. And then people get tired, and the world keeps moving on and on and on. So in this monologue, Ulysses here is urging this new change, in a way mirroring the mentality of the age, how people felt that they wanted to change. So the line says here, it's from Ulysses by Tennyson, and again the character is borrowed from Homer in the Odyssey. "'Tis not too late to seek a newer world. It is not too late to seek a newer world. There's always time to seek a new world, new ambitions, new experiences. Just to turn the page and start anew." Now, if you notice, I like how he started this with this old form of "it is." Saying, like, let's leave the old age and represented here in its old form of poetry, of literature, "'tis," and move forward to a newer world. A world with new ambitions, new interests, new experiences. We have had enough of this. We have had too much of this. So this tone of loss, of tragedy, of this urgent tone to change was generally present in Tennyson. Okay? So he wasn't only a poet of loss and change and sadness and sadness and unhappiness, but he was also a poet of change. He wanted new experiences. He wanted to push for new experiences. Now, because Tennyson, we'll see a whole poem from Tennyson after this. Because Tennyson was also the poet who praised the heroes, who was writing poetry on certain occasions, national occasions, heroic, historic occasions of the time, like the Crimean War of that time. He is considered to be the national poet of England, like a poet laureate, so to speak. So Tennyson became the national poet who composed poetry on certain national occasions. And of course, he became famous for praising the heroes, the soldiers. For him, the soldiers are the ones, not the politicians, and that defending the country, because they literally sacrificed their own lives, shed their own blood for the sake of the country. And this is how he speaks about them. Maybe you will take this as a criticism, but it's part of how he praises these heroes. So there's referring to the soldiers, the heroes. There's not to reason why. They don't argue. If there is a war, they just receive the orders, the commands from the leaders. They just go out. They don't say, why should I be fighting Russia? Why should I be fighting France? Why should I be going here and there? They don't ask questions. Because they're heroes, right? But also negative, because they can be sent here and there. Today they're fighting with Russia, tomorrow against Russia. Today with France, tomorrow against France. And this is politics. Politics is dirty, where the people, the politicians, the leaders are always sitting in their homes comfortably, gaining the benefits of the war, and the ordinary people lose their lives and their futures. And so there's not to reason why. There's but to do, to fight, to struggle, action. Some people speak, but those people do or die. So they fight, they go, they take action, deeds, not words. And sometimes they die. So generally people love poets who praise the heroes, who, because these are the dead people. Everyone loves the martyrs of the country, people who defend us, people who resist the occupations and the oppression. We love them. We love to praise them. And we love the poetry that praises them. And we love the poets that also praise those heroes. But is there criticism implied here? I guess yes. Because those people do. Other people talk. Just speak words. But those people do. Okay? So generally his poetry, his poems combine history, like historical events here, dramatic effect, the dramatic monologue, and there is generally a tone of sadness and loss, an atmosphere of sadness and loss. How do you feel that? How do you find that? Number one, the subject matter. When it's about death, and dying, when it's an elegy, of course there is going to be an atmosphere, a tone of sadness. When there is death and dying, so this poem here, there is death and dying, right? And the poem before, there is like, oh, too late, let's do something else, we're tired of this. And then the one before, which one here? Nature red in tooth and claw. So he's always obsessed with this. Everything dies. Nature is cruel. The age is like, we have had too much of this. Let's do something else. So this is how we feel the tone and the atmosphere of the poem. Look at the subject matter itself. What is it about? Elegy. So probably it's dark. It's about loss. Look at the words, the choice of words here, the diction itself. Oh, die. But this is the kind of death that is different. Like those people are proud. Like, I'm ready to die for my country. But there could be an implied criticism when he says, there's to do and die, others only say and live. Who are they? The people who push the soldiers, the armies to the battles. And some wars we've seen, whether in the Arab world or in Europe, some wars broke only because of stupid, trivial things between, the royal families and the politicians. And hundreds of thousands and millions of people. We'll see about this next class when we talk about the Great War, the First World War, when millions and millions of people died. And all of them were European, all of them were white, all of them were Christians, almost all of them. So we'll speak about, for example, now we move to Arnold after this, how those, despite the loss, the sadness, the unhappiness, they still believe there is a spark of hope that the good is yet to come. And when the First World War came and destroyed all this hope, people lost faith in everything, in God, in the Western civilization. So let's see this poem by Tennyson. Can someone read, please? Okay.
He claps the crack out.
The title is The Eagle.
The eagle. He claps the crack whistle up and crooked hands. Goes to the sun in lonely lands. Ranked with the
Azure world.
He stands. A wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunderbolt it falls.
Thank you. Someone else? One more? Okay, please.
He clasped, cracked with crooked hands, flowed with the sun, lonely lands, winged with the azure world. He stands,
The wrinkled.
the wrinkled sea, near beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunder, he
Bolt. Like a thunderbolt. He. For one more. One more. Okay. Haya.
He clasped the crag with crooked hands, close to the sun in lonely lands, ringed with the other world.
Azure.
Azure world he stands. The wrinkled sea beneath him crawls. He watches from his mountain walls, and like a thunder plot he falls.
Like a thunderbolt, he falls. What is he talking about? An eagle. What is an eagle? You know? You know the huge, powerful bird? You know the bald eagle, the symbol of many, it's on the flag, the seals of many countries in America and Egypt. Like there's always this eagle because the eagle represents what? Power, right? Strength. It's mighty. It's huge, it's big. And powerful. It's probably considered to be the king of all birds in a way. A famous bird of prey. Like it eats other birds and other animals. The sharp sight, the sharp beak or bill, the strong, the claws, the wings, the target. It soars up above the mountains, near the clouds, in the sky. So this bird, it sounds like, right, a romantic poem with an element of nature, but it's different in many ways here. Nature is used rather than nature is the text itself, is the theme, is the source of beauty. Nature here is used as a tool, a poetic, a literary device. So what do you notice in the text? Now he's talking about an eagle. When you read the text, what do you notice? What words do you find interesting, appealing? No, just pick words, circle words. Like what words do you find interesting? Let's circle some of these words.
He stands and then he goes.
So, one word.
Stands. He stands.
Can an eagle stand? Yes, stands. So which is more important? He or stands?
Stands.
Why? He or stands? One word.
He.
So I'm saying just one word. Pick one word, not phrases, not sentences. One word. Why he? Why is he interesting?
Because he's a bird.
This is a bird. This is a person. It's something he's trying to. He's implying something else. Interesting. So what else? Yes.
Watches.
Okay.
Because
But also the eagle watches the praise.
no, that's not what I mean.
Okay.
I want to say something. I think he's comparing he's criticizing someone, but putting as simple as the eagle.
The watches. Okay. Now my advice is that start with the little things first, and then we come to the conclusions and assumptions, what he means, what he implies. So let's circle the most significant words. So he goes for like hand. Okay, hands. Does an eagle have hands or wings? Is it because it rhymes with lands and stands, or is he saying something extra, implying? And also he and him and he and he and his. So there is emphasis here on the fact that this could not be about an eagle, but the eagle could be symbolizing something else. Let's not jump to conclusions. What does the eagle symbolize? A person, maybe. But who is this person? Let's just go back to the text. What does this bird do? Number one, claps the crag with a crooked hand. You know, crooked Hillary? This is from Trump. Crooked hands, like, you know, they can bend like this, and close to the sun. So if this is the sun, if it is a black sun, he flies like close to the sun, high up above, right? Close to the sun. In lonely lands where nobody is there, that's ringed with the azure. What's azure? Do you watch football? Do you like football?
Yes.
Yes. What is the Italian team usually called? Yeah. ايش بالإيطالي بيقولوا عنه الأزوري. Azure is from this. Why are they called? Because of their jerseys, they're blue. الأزرق يعني منتخب الأزرق. Okay, so azure means green, because what is green here? The skies and also beneath the sea. World, he stands where? Up above. The wrinkled sea, you know, because the sea is wrinkled with the waves. Beneath him crawls. And even the sea crawling, a baby crawls, right? Babies. Sometimes older people, sometimes ordinary people, when they're hiding, they crawl. So he watches from the mountain. If this is the mountain here, this is the eagle. I don't know how to draw an eagle. This is easy, this is difficult. So he watches from his mountain walls. He's just watching. So we go back to what? So flying up above, close to the sun, and sometimes just watching. Watching, like an eagle. Watchings from the mountain walls. They're like walls, yeah, you know? Again, Trump wants to build walls. So what this is, he's up above, detached, not because there could be things here. So unlike a thunder, you know, the lightning and the thunder, when it's heavily raining, there's the lightning and the thunder. So the lightning, there's the thunder, the huge, deafening sound we hear in the storms, in the rainstorms. Like a thunderbolt, what does he do? He falls. So one moment up, one moment down. It could be simply about an eagle. But this is not a romantic poem, where the poem could be simply about a bunch of daffodils or a sick rose or whatever. This is more. This is hiding something. This is symbolizing something. This could be an allegory. Now, do you like, what is the most important thing that happens in the whole text?
He falls.
Usually, yeah, he falls. And falling is loss, is decline. Falling down, you know? So one time you're up here, the next moment you're just in the bottom, falling. The falling could be like naturally falling just to get some prey and then to rise up again. But like what we see in Arabic, ما طار الطير وارتفع إلا كما طار الوقع. Like you fly, but later on you will fall. So if this stands for what? What do you think? What does the eagle stand for? You know.
I think the eagle stands for every person who
For?
for every person who is a boss and controlling them.
Okay, so people in control, people in authority, like kings.
He said mountain walls like he is in the palace.
Exactly. It's like, you know, the ivory towers detached from people. There are always walls hiding behind the walls, protecting your wealth and your family against the people who are just down. You don't even see them. So this could symbolize, power, authority, the king, the queen, people in charge who are always, strong and powerful. And then one moment they can. This could also symbolize the whole Western civilization. It's one moment there, it could end eventually. And if this is the peak, this is what happened in the First World War. All Europe was fighting with Europe and people were dying. This could be the Victorian age. They were hoping for change, for development, for progress because of technology and science and colonialism. But one moment, London as a society is, for example, is in poverty. People are poor, people starve. There's a lot of corruption. So it could symbolize many things. It could symbolize people's hopes of a better life. One moment you're very hopeful, the other moment you're just there.
They have a famous saying says, everything goes up must go down.
Whatever goes up must go down. So yeah, true. So this could be, in a way, the idea behind this text.
What if the eagle just falls down to attack an animal and get a food and then raise up above again?
Exactly, yeah. But the poem stops here. So where is the eagle now? It's down the bottom. What's going on? Is it just a moment? Is this, remember, what's his name? George Herbert. The fall shall further the flight in me. In his famous text, The Easter Wings. When he says, the fall will further the rise. If I fall, I will. But that was a religious poem. If you suffer, if you sin, it's bad, but it's also good. Because if you sin, you go back to God. And then you are a better human being. So this could be about loss, about the downfall of civilization, the downfall of imperialism, the downfall of authority, that no one only keeps here on top. Sooner or later, it's going to fall down, break down. Okay, this is a really interesting poem by Tennyson. Should we move? Now, Matthew Arnold, finally. Matthew Arnold. Okay, with Matthew, I will speak about one major poem. It's called Dover Beach. Are you familiar with Dover? Have you heard of Dover? Dove. But this is Dover Beach. Dover Beach is a place in England. You know, if this is England, do you know how to draw England? If this is England and this is France, this is Dover. So it's the place, it's actually a mountain, a high area that looks over the British Channel or British Canal here. Yeah, it's very famous in literature because it's very close to Europe. It's the closest place to Europe. It's also a mountain where people can stand on top of the mountain and look to France and Europe and to the sea below. Okay? So he's talking about this area, the beach here. The poet is up on top of the mountain, Dover, the Dover area, Dover Beach here, and looking down upon the beach itself. We're not going to study the whole poem, just taking the last stanza. So generally, Matthew Arnold is again trying to capture the crisis of faith. People were losing faith in their country, in themselves, in science, in knowledge, in the church, in faith, in spirituality, in everything. And this is the text that tries to capture this tone, the atmosphere of the society, the crisis of faith, which was a major theme, especially in the poetry of the Victorian age. The crisis of faith, the crisis of belief, the loss of faith, the loss of values, the decline of values. Because again, remember how we said many people believe that humanity is progressing forward. There could be some slowing down sometimes, but generally it's going forward. But many people believe that no, we're not improving, we're not progressing. The good things have long gone, and the bad things are still, the worst is still to come. So that is why this poem became very famous. Some people think that this is the most important single poem in the Victorian age. The most important poem in the Victorian age. Mainly because, again, it captures the essence of the crisis of faith of that time. But we'll see how he's a little bit different, Arnold. Okay? So where is he? He looks over the English Channel from Dover, he looks down. What does he see? A calm sea. The sea is calm. The beach is calm. No people there, and the sea is not rough. Interesting, beautiful, right? Generally, like, you see beauty. If you are a romantic poet, you see beauty here. You see inspiration. It reminds you of the good old days, if you are a romantic. But here it inspires what? Nature inspires the idea of the crisis of faith. In the poem, we see the vision of the whole later Victorian era. The vision is a vision of pessimism. Pessimism. Again, similar to Tennyson in a way. But Arnold is a little bit different, because at the end of the poem, he has a way out of this. There is hope. There is a way out of this whole crisis. Yes, he admits that there is a crisis of faith, but the way out of this is simply to love each other, to be honest to each other. And this is simply said than done. We can all claim to want to be good, to love each other, to be honest with each other, to be frank with each other. But when it comes to real life, life was getting a lot more difficult, especially with jobs and competitions and conflicts everywhere in the society. But this makes the poem, because if you like dark stuff, this is dark, pessimistic. But there's also hope. We love to have hope at the end. Remember Shakespeare with the younger generations always giving us some hope, a new king, or young people getting married, so to speak. So the extract here, this is the last stanza. Dover Beach by Arnold again. So when he speaks about the crisis of belief and faith, he ends the poem. It's a short poem, by the way. I think like 30-something lines. Even the word it's like a sigh of relief. Like you can't even speak. Love, talking to his love, his wife or someone. Let us be true to one another, us, the unity here. If you are by yourself, if I am by myself, we're not going to find a way out of this. Let us be true to one another. That's the way out of this. For the world, our world now, our society, the Victorian age, Western civilization, which seems, and the word seems, it's not true. There is a fake, artificial smiley there. So the world is horrible, but there is always this smiley that makes it look what? It seems, which seems to lie. I like the word lie here because there could be a pun on lie, not to tell the truth. But lie here lies to lie before us, like there, out there, in front of us, standing or sitting or whatever. So to lie before us like a land of dreams. It's a land of dreams and visions. We dream of a better life, but is it a better life? Are we going there? So various, so beautiful, so new. This is all in our dreams, in our hopes. So this is all a parenthetical statement. So the world has. And I love how he uses, this is Victorian age, we don't frequently find have and thee and thou unless there is a reason. So have, in my opinion, he thinks that this has been the case all along. Before Shakespeare, during Shakespeare, after Shakespeare, the world has always been like this. We have dreams and hopes and visions of a better life, but in reality, the world had really neither joy, no love, no light, no certitude, no peace, no help for pain. No, 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 no. And this is the pessimism here. Pessimism in the repetition of the word no, 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 no. No, 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 no. So, because the world has nothing, no joy, no love, no light, no certitude, certainty, no peace, no help for pain, no one can help you relieve your pain, release the pain, the anger. So let us be true to one another. Let's love each other. And this is the message here. So in this extract from Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold, the theme here is, I don't know what, like pessimism, loss of faith, the crisis of belief. But also, while the poet is exposing this world that lacks everything, that has nothing. Remember, I think this reminds me of King Lear at the end. No, 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 never, never, never. Why should a dog, a rat, a horse have a life and thou no life, no breath at all? Never, 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 never. So there's the emphasis here on the negativity here. So despite this fact, despite the fact that the poem is about the crisis of belief in the Victorian age, that people were losing faith in everything, the poet here is giving us a spark of hope. The poem is giving us something to cling to, something to hold on to. And this thing is, let's love each other. Let's be honest to each other. Please go, when you go home, read the whole poem or listen to it, watch it on YouTube. I'm sure you will love it. But again, I'll stop here. No more Victorian literature. We're moving to last class, our last lecture on the 20th century poetry. But listen, wait a minute. We'll see how this idea, we'll see this little tiny ray of hope, what happens to it in the 20th century. Like people again had this dark, pessimistic atmosphere living in, like we should do something new. Let's work together. Let's do something. And early in the 20th century, we have the Great War. So if people had a tiny little shred of hope of a better life, of a life, beautiful new life, a life of dreams, of people becoming better, improving, progressing forward, the war destroyed every tiny little shred of hope. And we'll see how this influences literature. And then T.S. Eliot comes and says, April is the cruelest month. So we're going to summarize and see how, for example, everything. And it's beautiful how T.S. Eliot, in the opening line of The Wasteland, he alludes to, remember? To Chaucer himself. So we started this basically with Chaucer, saying he's the father of English poetry. And in his poem, The Canterbury Tales, he begins describing spring and April, how beautiful it is, how it gives new life, new hope, dreams and visions, like the good is yet to come. So it's like T.S. Eliot comes and says, okay, wait a minute, stop dreaming. So he goes back, he takes Chaucer, drags him by his hand, and tells him it's all a lie. All these hopes and dreams and visions of a better life, it's a lie. And April is the cruelest month. We'll stop here. And next class, I will be speaking about just certain trends in the 20th century. I just have to remind you, when we say here, when we discuss the Romantic age or the Victorian age or the 20th century, it's impossible to cover every feature, every trend. And it's wrong to assume that all poets wrote sad and pessimistic poetry, because there are always different poets, or sometimes the poets would be writing differently. But the major trends, in a way or another, were dark, tragic, and poetry of loss, despair, and pessimism. It's good that Matthew Arnold here leaves us with a tiny little hope. We will see what happens to the hope in the 20th century. Thank you very much. If you have questions, please do ask. If you have a comment, feel free to express yourself. Yes. Okay, thank you. Yeah, go on.
Does the society affect the poets?
Say again.
Does the society affect the poems and the types of or the themes of poems?
Okay. Which influences which? Poetry influences literature, or literature influences poetry? I think it goes both ways.
No, I mean society.
Society is life.
Does that affect?
Literature? Of course it does. Of course. Generally, people say that all poets are products of their time and societies. But again, it differs from one poet to the other. That's why when we discussed, for example, Charles Dickens and Thomas Hardy, I said that, look, both are Victorian. Yes, this is an early Victorian, this is a late Victorian, but they produce totally different literature. The more important question is whether literature influences life. Does it influence life? It certainly does, in particular ways. Thank you for your question.